And now, once again, Richard Thomas.
Earlier this year, we began a nationwide campaign, America's Search for Miracles. And our viewers responded with hundreds and hundreds of truly inspirational letters. One of them came from Mrs. Suzanne Ray of Brentwood, Tennessee. She wrote that her pastor at the First Baptist Church had seen our request and urged her to submit her story. Well, it was just one page, but what she wrote was so inspiring and so miraculous that we had to include it in our show. And when you see what happened, you'll understand why. On September 4th, 1998, Henry Ray was admitted into Williamson Medical Center near Nashville, Tennessee, for minor surgery on a torn rotator cuff. His doctor, Paul Thomas, explains.
The rotator cuff is the major tendon that moves your shoulder, and the tendon had pulled loose from the bone, so our plans were to go in and find the tendon first and then reattach that tendon to the bone to improve his function and improve his pain.
You look adorable.
It was to be a simple, routine procedure. No one, not even his wife Suzanne, was concerned that anything could go wrong.
And I leaned over and kissed his cheek, and I said goodbye, and I told him I'd see him in the room when he got through.
The operation was going smoothly until suddenly, without warning, the unexpected occurred.
I had identified the tendon and was getting ready to sew it to the bone, and out of the blue, the anesthesiologist said,
"Guys, hold up a minute. We got a problem. He's in V-fib."
Henry's heart had stopped beating, and everyone in the OR immediately moved into code blue. Dr. Thomas's first assistant, Brian Lewis, recalls the chaos inside the room.
All of a sudden, when everything went wild, I started compressions or pumping on Mr. Ray's chest.
But when he didn't respond, they tried stimulation. Nurse Lori Hargrove was the surgery coordinator that day.
He was flatlined for quite a while, and we continued CPR, and nothing seemed to work. He kept bouncing back and forth, but he never responded.
Doctors normally will do a CPR for approximately 30 or 45 minutes. After about 45 minutes, it seemed rather hopeless. It wasn't like he was responding or was trying to come back at all.
While the OR team continued to fight for Henry's life, Dr. Thomas, a close friend of the Rays, went to tell Suzanne what was happening.
She, of course, thought I was all finished and was all smiling.
Well, that was quick.
Oh my God, I don't know how to tell you this, Suzanne.
He started crying, and he said, "Suzanne, oh God, Suzanne, Henry's heart has stopped on the operating table. We're working on him, but it doesn't look good, and we have got to pray." And I said, "Yes, we have got to pray."
When Dr. Thomas returned to the operating room, he was told that nothing had changed and that CPR should be stopped.
And Dr. Thomas said, "No, absolutely not." He said, "We're not stopping yet."
But after an hour, there was little hope of reviving him.
His skin was blue. He was cold to the touch. I'd never seen anybody be out that long that ever came back.
Suzanne, meanwhile, was waiting alone and praying when Drew Thigpen, an associate pastor from her church, stopped by.
Hey. Oh, Drew. How are you? Thank you for coming.
How is he?
When I first saw Suzanne, she was obviously distraught, and we spent several minutes praying and talking together, and I encouraged her, "Suzanne, we've got to get in touch with some other people."
Kenneth, this is Drew.
In a period of 15 minutes, there were phone calls to our friends, to other church members, and so they immediately came to the hospital.
So beginning from that moment, you began to see kind of wave of activity happening throughout the community. There were probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 people who showed up. People were praying in the lobbies. Others were at church. There was a unified effort of prayer that was going up for Henry.
My prayer that day over and over was, "Lord, I know that you love Henry as much as I love him, but I need him here with me because we have only been married 5 years, and you gave him to me, and I'm asking you to touch his heart and let him live for me. And I prayed that over and over and over again.
But after an hour and 30 minutes of desperately trying to revive him, the monitors attached to Henry's body continued to show no signs of life.
Clear.
After 90 minutes of CPR, medicine, pacemakers put into his heart, the cardiologist told Dr. Thomas, we need to stop. We can't do no more. I'm still pumping, you know. I haven't been told to quit. And so I look at Dr. Thomas, and he's just sitting there looking at me. I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, let's quit.
It was a decision that no doctor or friend ever wants to make. But something greater than medical science was about to happen inside the OR. The dramatic conclusion, when It's a Miracle continues. On September 4th, 1998, Henry Ray was admitted into Williamson Medical Center near Nashville, Tennessee, for what was expected to be a routine procedure.
Guys, hold up a minute. We got a problem.
But as his physician, Dr. Paul Thomas, was finishing the surgery, Henry's heart suddenly stopped beating, and every effort to revive him failed. While his wife, pastor, and friends waited outside, praying for a miracle. Inside, the OR operating team battled to save Henry's life. But after 90 minutes without any sign of a heartbeat, they finally admitted defeat.
We've lost him.
When you quit, you don't just kind of walk off and go your own way. I guess we were all just emotionally just very drained, and we all just stood there, almost in disbelief that this had really happened.
And then the quiet in the room was interrupted by an incredible sound.
His EKG monitor just started going beep, beep, beep.
There's a pulse here, Paul. He's alive.
And his heartbeat came back without any human intervention, without any of the fancy medicines. Despite that whole hour and a half doing everything right, we couldn't do it. And it was really only after we stopped, when nothing else was being done, that his heart began to beat again. There were tears of joy in that whole operating room, truly tears of joy.
Henry's wife, Suzanne, was deep in prayer when Dr. Thomas brought her the wonderful news.
Suzanne, I have great news.
And he said, Henry is alive. It's guarded, but he's alive. Dr. Thomas was crying. He was so emotionally changed, he canceled the rest of his surgeries for that day.
Meanwhile, Henry remained in a semi-conscious, guarded condition in the intensive care unit.
Patient having loss of oxygen for this extended period of time.
He said, now, I have to tell you that Henry could be brain damaged. He could have kidney failure. There's a lot of complications that he may have.
We've come this far, Doctor.
While Dr. Thomas explained the gravity of the situation to Suzanne, Henry lay nearby.
Loss of memory, loss of
I heard Dr. Thomas telling Suzanne he can have brain damage, he can be paralyzed. We absolutely do not know. And I thought, are they talking about me? So I looked down at the foot of the bed and I saw my toes. And I thought, well, I better wiggle those little boys and see if they work or not. And sure enough, they worked. And then I got to thinking, well, you know, that's not much of a test. So I raised my feet off the bed, turned them back and forth, wiggled my toes again. Of course, no one said anything. And then I got to thinking brain damage.
Dr. Thomas and Suzanne had missed Henry's signal. It wouldn't be until the next day that Suzanne would realize just how miraculous his recovery had been.
I just bent over him and I said, oh, honey, I love you so much. And he says, I love you too. So he had perfect speech, and it was great. So he was whole, and he was fine. He didn't have any complications whatsoever.
There was a problem when you were in the operating room.
I just finally looked him square in the face, and I said, you died on that operating room table yesterday. And he just looked at me. I said, do you understand what I'm saying? You died for an hour and a half. And there was a lot of prayers sent up on your behalf, and the Lord answered those.
And I just cried. And We cried together, matter of fact.
No one who witnessed what happened that day will ever forget the moment when the tragedy of an unexpected death was transformed by the miracle of life.
I was an emergency room nurse for 11 years before I started working in surgery and did hundreds of codes during that time. And I had never seen one as far gone as he was to ever come back, let alone come back to have no brain damage, no organ damage, to be completely normal again.
How are you feeling?
I would say this is as true a miracle as you'll ever see. I know everybody has their own stories about a miracle, but I really think this is it. I think this is the #1 miracle that he ever did.
God is in the miracle business, I believe. And what I saw that day was a miracle.
I believe without a doubt that God had on his agenda on September 4th to perform a miracle. And I just feel that this miracle is a God story for all of us.
It's been nearly a year since Henry Ray's amazing and miraculous recovery, and we thought we should check up on Henry and see how he's been doing since he left the hospital. He and his wife, Suzanne, join us now from their home in Brentwood, Tennessee. Henry, it's good to see you up and about. I wanted to start by asking you about your heart. I was told that your doctor suspected that what happened might have been caused by some sort of heart blockage. Is that right?
That's correct. We went to a prominent heart specialist here in the Nashville area and had a complete heart checkup.
And how did those tests turn out?
Well, the doctor was quite amazed and said, well, Mrs. Ray, we found no heart blockage. We found no heart disease. In fact, Henry had no bruising of the heart, which would be something we would expect from CPR.
Well, Henry, it sounds like even after all you've been through, you're in pretty good health.
Terrific health. I don't feel any problems whatsoever from the past.
Well, that's great news. And I hope you continue to stay well and strong. Suzanne and Henry, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us.